Chalk Talk is brought to you by Isolite, the emergency lighting experts. Stay educated, my friends.
In a world of uncertainty, what's better than a lifetime warranty? Taking it a step even further, how about eliminating the need for a battery? That's what we've done here with our dual tech hybrid, as you can see, is our topic for our August Chalk Talk. I'm Western Regional Sales Manager Greg Keel, along with our Eastern Regional Sales Manager Matt Bird, and as always, our host is our Director of Product Development, Evan Ackman. Evan is not introducing a new product today, but rather reintroducing our dual tech hybrid. We're going to talk about the benefits of this great product. Evan, take it away.
Thanks, Greg. And thank you all for joining us here on this last Chalk Talk of the summer. Longtime and astute Chalk Talk viewers will recognize that this is actually one of our early Chalk Talks. And one of the things that we've been doing this summer is trying to get some of those old ones re-recorded so that there's actually video and audio associated with it rather than just a whole slide deck. So we've taken the opportunity to update and modernize this. We've learned a couple things about how to do these presentations over the last 3 years. So that's what this is. It's a reintroduction of the dual tech hybrid. Now we're going to do this in the same way that we do most of our Chalk Talks. We'll talk about some background. That's really going to be the code section of this. It's a little bit different than what we usually talk about. Often we care a lot more about sort of the performance of these systems, but we're going to be focused on maintenance today. In particular, we're going to talk about the cost of that maintenance, what it really means for a facilities team to have to deal with these life safety systems really over the course of their lifetime. We'll then jump into the product overview. We'll start by talking about some existing solutions, some more traditional ways to reduce that cost of maintenance. And then we'll talk about why we think that the hybrid exit sign is really the way to go forward for a lot of different job types and why that might be true. And then as always, we'll end with our sales and support materials, give you a little bit of information about what's coming as follow-up, what's already available, and then put our contact information up there so that you can get a little bit more information. With that said, let's jump right in. Now, as I mentioned, usually we're talking about getting to 1 foot candle on the ground, or, if we're talking about exit signs, we might be saying that they have to be, within a certain height above the door and the stroke width and the colors and all that stuff. But what we're really focused on today is the maintenance of these exit signs, what has to happen throughout the entire lifetime of the facility. Now, all of this is sort of backed by the fundamental assumption that batteries are consumable devices. They will not last forever. They are little bits of chemistry that eventually sort of deteriorate to the point where they have lower capacity, they have a lower lifespan. They won't keep that exit sign on for a long period of time. Eventually, they won't even be able to turn it on at all. Now, of course, we care about that, and the code cares about it, and NFPA 101 covers this and how do we make sure that these batteries are operating in your facility. And it has a test regime that all battery powered devices have to pass. Every month we have to test these devices for 30 seconds. That's really to prove that the battery is still there, that it's still able to get the exit sign lit. It's kind of an audit, you can think of it as. And then once a year, there's a full duration, a 90-minute test. And that's really there to prove that the battery capacity is still appropriate for life safety applications. Now, one of the mistakes or maybe misunderstandings that people have in this industry is what self-diagnostics actually can do for you. Self-diagnostics initiates these tests. It can force the exit sign to do it, but like a tree falling in the forest with no one around to hear it, if the facilities team doesn't know that a self-diagnostic has failed, then what good is it? And as such, NFPA 101 mandates that in addition to self-diagnostic exit signs, you still have the obligation to go and document the output of the self-diagnostic test. And so at the end of the day, it kind of reduces the sort of the timeliness of the testing, but on average, once a month, even if you have self-diagnostics, someone is going to have to be running around the facility, going and writing down that exit sign number 102 has passed its monthly test. And so self-diagnostics isn't that silver bullet that a lot of people believe it is. And I tried to put a cost on this, and this is obviously very difficult. And we talk about how difficult it is to get perfect costs every time we mention it. But I've just sort of thrown some averages and put some darts out there. And so if we say that we have a $50 exit sign, Is that high or low? Depends on the application. It might be a little bit inexpensive. If it's an architectural exit sign, that's a little bit expensive if you're thinking about a thermoplastic exit sign. We're assuming a labor rate is about 30 bucks an hour or about 50 cents a minute is what that boils down to. Again, your mileage may vary. Some places that's going to be more expensive. It might be more expensive based off of the type of person who's going around and doing this ongoing maintenance. But for the purposes of our Chalk Talk today, we're going to throw that dart and say 50 cents a minute. And then I've made some assumptions about what it might take to sort of walk around a facility with saying maybe it's 2 minutes between exits. You're going to sit there for the 30-second tests, and then you're going to go do 30 seconds worth of documentation each, which means 3 minutes per exit sign per month. And as you can see, if we look at that over the course of about 10 years, what you end up with is the total cost being about $230. And so it really is swamping that purchase order price with the cost of the ongoing maintenance for the facilities team. And this doesn't even take into account some of the other things that might happen. It doesn't account for a battery replacement if a device were to fail or were to have an issue. And at about that 10-year point, that's really when the batteries are going to start being at that point where they may not work for the exit sign anymore. You're going to have to replace it. It doesn't take into account that cost. It also doesn't really appropriately account for the 90-minute test that will need to be run 10 times over that 10 years. It could be as simple as it's just another test or another 2 tests. But if you're waiting around and you have to do something else, that could actually drive that cost even a little bit higher. Just depending on how the person was going to do it. But the point stands that this is something that really drives the overall cost of this system, not just the sticker price of the exit sign itself. Now, there are some great typical solutions. So this is good news, everybody. We have stuff that solves these problems. And if we're trying to reduce maintenance and keep the system as simple as possible, our traditional solution is to say, well, that needs to be a self-luminous tritium exit sign. Now, this is the perfect solution. There's no AC power required to this device. There's no batteries. It's truly a zero-wire, hang and bang kind of solution. There are some potential reservations. The aesthetics of these devices may be an issue for certain types of jobs. They're not as bright. The legend tends to be sort of inverted so that the exit is white and the background is red or green or black or some color like you see on the bottom right there. And I just know in some areas of the country, there's an anti-preference for these types of devices for various reasons. And so if that doesn't work, one of the other solutions that historically we would go to is a very traditional photoluminescent exit sign, which is, it's like a thin piece of plastic that's doped with that photoluminescent material. And that can certainly be a solution, but there's a lot of limitations with photoluminescent exit signs and how they're sort of designed and deployed into a system. Obviously, they have requirements for the other fixtures that are on in the space. They need a certain level of foot candles incident to them, basically at all times, in order to make sure that they're always ready to go. And so getting a system that's properly designed that an inspector is going to feel really good about, it's kind of complicated when you're in photoluminescent land, and that can really drive the cost and complexity of the job up. And just if you've noticed that today's Chalk Talk is a little bit of a weird hour, like we did Thursday, Friday this week instead of Tuesday, Thursday, that's because Greg and I were actually out in Texas at a trade show. And as we were walking around and setting up, I actually saw this little gem leading out from sort of a back kitchen prep area into the main ballroom of the hotel. And so obviously this doesn't meet any sort of code. It's not visible when the doors are ajar. It's not visible when the power is out. It's literally just a printout of our SLX60 that they got from the webpage and then stuck on the door with tape. So it's not even the right size. Tape generally isn't considered a permanent mounting method. And this is also an area where like water and stuff is splashing around. So paper and water, not necessarily a good fit. And I was thinking about this actually, and I said, well, this would be a great opportunity for a photoluminescent sign. And that may be true. I mean, it looks bright enough, but then something else happened. This area of the building isn't permanently occupied. And while we were tearing down this trade show, we actually had a fire alarm going off, which is 100% true. And no one really left because everyone knew it was a false alarm. But as I was walking around, as we were tearing down the show, I noticed that the lights in this room weren't on. And so if that were truly an emergency, if there were a photoluminescent exit sign in there, it wouldn't have been energized. It would not be code compliant. It wouldn't be directing people out the door. And so this isn't really the way to do things. And the photoluminescents have some limitations. I guess the ultimate irony here is that basically everywhere else in this job were self-luminous exit signs. So they could have just command stripped one up above this door and moved on with life, but they elected to not do that. So the solution that we're really talking about today is the hybrid solution, as we mentioned at the beginning. And the trade-off here is it's still a photoluminescent exit sign, but with one caveat. We're going to bring AC power to it in the same way that we would to a traditional exit sign. And with that affordance, what it allows us to do is have our own internally illuminated exit sign that, in addition to providing light for the exit legend when there is power available, it's charging a photoluminescent material so that it stays illuminated without having to worry about external design constraints when there's a power outage. So now power's on, the LEDs stay on, it looks like a regular exit sign, the power goes out, the photoluminescent material has been charged up, and now it's operating as the backup. And the way that this sort of works is it's like a 3-layer design, right? We've got this thing on the left here that's this photoluminescent diffuser. There's some technology in there about making sure that those white LEDs get in and then they bounce out. There's a green film to give it a nice look and a nice color green. And then the metal housing on the outside, which is what makes sure it says exit and gives it a more aesthetic and architectural view. And the way that it works, as I just said, is when we have power, when the utility is available, those little white LEDs are on. And in addition to having that light blast out through the diffuser and through that green film to make it look like an exit sign over there on the right, it at the same time is charging up that photoluminescent diffuser. So that photoluminescent material in there is now at a higher energy state. So when power goes out, as we see here, those little phosphors in there are going to give off photons. They're going to push it through that green film, and it's just going to look like the same green exit sign, but there's no battery, which means there's no maintenance, which means there's no ongoing cost to operating this exit sign. And that is really sort of a powerful message for an exit sign. One of the questions that comes up that I do like to touch on very quickly, though, is that truly bright? I mean, if you go back and look here, right, you might say, well, generally photoluminescent signs just have that photoluminescent material. It's really just this thing that I'm circling in red right here. Does this diffuser mean that that's not bright enough for all applications? And that's not the case. The way that UL decides what a viewing distance is for an exit sign, it can be done on a traditional battery-backed exit sign through technical analysis, but for something like this, where it's a little bit different, they have this observational visibility test. And what they do is kind of what you see at the bottom there. They take exit and then they take a piece of tape and they mask off little parts of it. So instead of saying exit, it says exit or XE or EIT, something such that it's a little bit different. And then they have people with good vision stand at various distances, 50, 75 feet, and 100 feet. And if they can tell the difference between those guys, then you get that as the rating for the product. And our DTH products actually meet that 100-foot visibility test, which is the maximum that you can have for any exit sign. So this is as good as and better than any exit sign that exists on the market in terms of its observational visibility distance. It's rated for every application that an exit sign can go into. And the DTH2 is a very sort of pretty and nice product. It shares a housing and an aesthetic with our thin line series, which means that it's constructed of a 2-piece die-cast aluminum. We have it in various colors. As I mentioned before, it's UL approved for a 100-foot viewing distance. It's listed to 924. It obviously complies with NFPA 101 and all of those maintenance regimes sort of not being present. It's all on the level. It recharges fast. This is a question that comes up all the time when we're talking about the dual tech hybrids, is how fast does that photoluminescent material recharge? It's a couple of hours. And what code says that we have to do is recharge within 24. So In general, I would say this probably charges faster than most battery-backed exit signs. So there's nothing to worry about on that front. And because of the way that we've designed it, because that photoluminescent material is very highly reliable, it's really just a piece of plastic that's doped with a special compound. And because of the way that we drive the LEDs, because of the way that we've designed the circuitry in there, we have this product offered with a lifetime warranty. It's not an optional extra. If you buy a DTH2 and it goes bad in 30 years, we'll replace that free of charge. It's a lifetime warranty for the rest of the life of the product. And it does have that architectural design, as I mentioned before. So it's got that super thin profile, the multiple housing colors, including an entire rainbow of custom colors. We can really do everything. The only caveat that I will call attention to with signs of this type is we only make it available in a green legend. And that's just because of the photoluminescent material. There's no good way to have a red version of that can be bright enough to meet those observational visibility requirements. And so as of today, because of the technology, we only offer it with a green legend. And as is true with the thin line, it has the hang straight pendant. So even on sloped roofs, it's going to hang straight and hang straight down, and it's damp location listed. So it works in any application that's really indoors. So that door that I showed you before at the hotel would be a great application for this dual tech hybrid type exit sign. With that said, as Greg mentioned at the top of the show, this is not a new product. So spec sheets, installation guides, and a bunch of materials are up right now. And as always, as a follow-up to this presentation, you're going to get a video of me giving it with the little annotations in there and the audio, as well as the slides themselves directly. So if you want to give this presentation to other people at your agency or to your customers, you'll have access to that and you can do it in your own voice. With that said, I certainly appreciate you guys being here today, and we also appreciate everything that you do for us. So if there's anything that myself, Greg, or Matt can do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. That's not just about DTH2 issues. If you want to have training on anything that we touch and do, we certainly would love to support you with that. I'll stick around for a little bit for questions. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your week, weekend, and the rest of summer. Thank you all.